The night air was cold enough to sting, and the sound of a motorcycle engine rolling to a stop made every breath catch in the pregnant teenager's chest, because she already knew this was the moment her fragile world might finally break or somehow, impossibly, be saved. She stood frozen under a flickering streetlight, one hand protectively resting on her belly, when the massive biker stepped off his bike and calmly asked her name, and in that instant every bad decision, every whispered insult, every night she had cried herself to sleep came rushing back all at once. Before the story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that even the darkest moments can turn into something beautiful, take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. Her name was Lily Carter, and she was 17, homeless, and 8 months pregnant, with nowhere left to run. The bus station bench she had been sleeping on for 3 nights straight was just across the street, but fear had pinned her feet to the pavement. Lily had grown up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, and when her pregnancy started to show, the looks changed first, then the whispers, then the doors quietly closing. Her parents had told her she had made her choice and would have to live with it, her friends had drifted away, and the father of her baby had vanished the moment responsibility became real. By the time Lily ended up on that street corner, she had learned to keep her eyes down and her voice small, because attention had only ever brought pain. The biker who stood in front of her was everything she had been taught to fear. His name was Marcus Hale, though she didn't know that yet, and the Hells Angels patch on his jacket felt like a warning label stamped across her heart. Behind him, one by one, motorcycles rolled in and parked along the curb, their engines rumbling like distant thunder. 2 became 10, 10 became 50, until the street seemed to fill with leather jackets, heavy boots, and faces hardened by years of surviving their own battles. Lily's mind screamed that this was a mistake, that she should run, but her body refused to move, and the biker's steady presence was strangely calm, almost grounding, as if he wasn't there to threaten her but to understand why she looked so terrified. When Lily finally managed to give her name, it came out barely louder than the hum of the streetlight, and she waited for whatever cruelty she assumed would follow. Instead, Marcus noticed the way her hands trembled, the bruises on her arms from sleeping in unsafe places, and the unmistakable curve of her stomach beneath her oversized hoodie. Something shifted in him then, something that had nothing to do with his reputation and everything to do with the life he had lived before the road had become his home. Marcus had grown up forgotten too, bouncing between foster homes, learning early that the world could be brutal if you didn't find your own family. The Hells Angels, for all the fear they inspired, had become that family for him, a brotherhood bound not just by rebellion but by loyalty and an unspoken code about protecting the vulnerable. As the other bikers gathered closer, Lily's heart pounded harder, but what she didn't realize was that they weren't circling her like predators, they were forming a shield. One of them quietly called for food, another offered a jacket, and someone else stepped away to make a phone call. No one touched her without permission, no one raised their voice, and slowly, painfully slowly, Lily's terror began to crack, replaced by confusion and then disbelief. She had expected judgment, maybe violence, but what she was facing instead was concern, real and unfiltered, from people she had been told were monsters. The challenges Lily carried were heavier than her small frame should have had to bear. She was terrified of becoming a mother when she still felt like a child herself, terrified of hospitals she couldn't afford, terrified that her baby would inherit the same loneliness she had known. That night, under the watchful presence of 220 Hells Angels who had been alerted through a rapid chain of calls and messages, those fears were finally spoken out loud, not in dramatic speeches but in quiet explanations about how she had ended up there, about how she just wanted her baby to be safe. And for the first time in months, someone listened without interrupting, without blaming, without telling her what she should have done differently. What happened next was something Lily would spend the rest of her life trying to put into words. The bikers pooled money without hesitation, arranging a safe place for her to stay that very night. One of them knew a doctor who volunteered at a women's clinic, another had a sister who worked with young mothers, and within hours, a plan began to form around Lily, solid and protective, like arms closing around someone who had been falling for far too long. These men, often judged by their appearance alone, moved with quiet efficiency, not seeking praise or attention, just doing what they believed was right. Over the following weeks, Lily's life changed in ways she never thought possible. She was given a clean room, prenatal care, and help applying for programs she didn't even know existed. Marcus checked in regularly, not as a savior but as someone making sure promises were kept. The Hell's Angels didn't hover, didn't demand gratitude, and didn't try to become something they weren't. They simply showed up, again and again, proving that family doesn't always look the way the world expects it to. When Lily went into labor on a quiet morning just before sunrise, she wasn't alone. Outside the hospital, rows of motorcycles stood like sentinels, their riders waiting patiently, heads bowed in respect for a young woman fighting the hardest battle of her life. Inside, Lily held on to the knowledge that somewhere beyond those walls, 220 people were hoping for her strength, for her baby's first cry, for a future that finally felt possible. When her son was born healthy and strong, the tears she shed weren't just from relief, but from the overwhelming realization that kindness had found her when she needed it most. If this story is touching your heart right now, if it's reminding you that compassion can come from the most unexpected places, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and let us know that stories like this matter. As Lily healed and learned how to be a mother, she often thought back to that cold night under the flickering streetlight, the moment when fear had nearly swallowed her whole. She understood now that the question that froze her wasn't really about her name, but about whether she still believed she deserved to be seen. The Hell's Angels hadn't just given her help, they had given her dignity, and that gift changed everything. Before this story ends, we ask you from the bottom of our hearts to comment and tell us what this story made you feel, because your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Years later, Lily would tell her son that family is not always who you're born to, but who shows up when the world turns its back, and somewhere out on the open road, the rumble of motorcycles would always remind her that even in the darkest moments, kindness can arrive in the most unexpected form and change a life forever.